I just pray that you would speak through us to us, God. I pray that this would not be about me or Bishop or anybody else, God, but this would just simply be to be able to just kind of light up your word, your understanding, God, and what you want to do in the life and the hearts of those who follow you. God, I pray that you give him the right words, me the right words to make the biggest difference that we can. Speak faith, speak wisdom, speak truth in us today, God. We love you and we thank you. In your name I pray. Amen. What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of The Ultra. And I want to just kind of we have actually Bishop, and y'all know Bishop, he's back with us again. We have a pretty big announcement today. We are going to be giving away a special set of Apple AirPods for whoever leaves a link or a comment in the description box below. So all you have to do is, when you see anything in the New Testament, any video of a New Testament passage, if you'll drop a link or a comment in that description box and say, hey, I mean, you can't just put a period. I mean, you gotta say, hey, this is what I got out of today's message, or really like today, really like the chapters that we are in today, or something that you got out of it. If you do that, then every time you do that, for every single chapter, we're putting your name in a hat, name in a hat, name in a hat. So if you do it for all, over 50 chapters that we're going to do in the New Testament, if you do it for all of them, hey, that's 50 chances that you have to win a pair of Apple AirPods. If you do it 10, hey, you still got 10 chances to win. But the more you do it, the more likely you are to win these. So drop a comment in the comment section today. We'll be talking about this every single day. But like I said, we got with us Bishop today, and hey, good to have you back. It's been a minute. It's been a minute. Here. We're actually going to be in Acts today, Acts chapter 1 through chapters 5, and what we see in Acts, and you can even kind of comment on it, is we see a guy who is trying to write a story that he heard a lot about, even participated a lot in, and somebody who was a protege of Paul. So you want to tell us a little bit about the guy who wrote Acts, and then maybe what you really got from today's message.
Yeah, well, we have Luke is the author of Acts, and we know that Luke is a huge writer. I mean, look at the book of Acts and look at how much he wrote. We also know that he is a historian, and many historians who have studied him and who have passed away.
Chapters, 28 chapters, just in Acts.
Yes,
in Acts, yeah.
He wrote a lot of words and a lot of verses, but we know that Luke is arguably one of the most accurate, if not the most accurate historian that has ever lived.
Fair.
Yes.
Dude, fair.
He knows his stuff. He has lived it. He has learned from so many wonderful people. We know that even when he says in the opening words that in my former book, that he's even the author of the Gospel of Luke. Mm-hmm. So he's got a lot of credentials for what he is writing here. He's been first-hand experience in all this and very detailed in all this stuff. People that have studied the Bible have even gone back and looked.
Dude, there was actually a guy who looked at all these towns, all these governors, all these leaders, and was like, man, I don't believe in the Bible. I'm about to go disprove it. So he went around to all these places that Luke talks about, and instead of disproving the Bible, he actually became a Christian, because he's like, well, these places actually exist. We didn't know up until this moment, but he said it was going to be right here. We started digging, and lo and behold, this place really existed in the time that he said. Here's their leader, and he put his faith just because, like you said, Luke was such a good writer.
Yeah, that's what I was about to touch on, that Luke is just very detailed, and all of these places that he's mentioned have been proven true.
Yes, absolutely. Well, let me kind of get into something a little bit different besides the authorship, because what we see, I believe, is an outline for church. If you look in chapter 2, you'll look in verse 42, and you've been in churches, you've been in mega churches, before, so you kind of get it. But when it comes to how you do church, how a church operates, and I would even say 5 pillars of the most important thing that a church can do. This is what we at Blackjack, we base our whole operations. Every single thing we do flows through Acts chapter 2, starting at verse 42, going all the way down to the end of verse 48. And that is, and you'll look, all the believers devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching. That's discipleship. Okay? They devoted themselves to fellowship and to sharing of the meals. All right, that's fellowship. And a deep sense of awe came over, and all the apostles performed many miraculous signs and wonders, and all the believers met together in one place and shared everything that they had. Boom, that's missions. That's literally what we're called to do. They sold their property and possessions and shared the money that they had with those in need. They worshiped together in temple. So boom, we got worship, and then we keep on reading and we look about evangelism. So we got evangelism, worship, discipleship, fellowship, and missions all packed into those couple of verses. And in my understanding, if a church isn't doing those 5 things, it's failing of what the biblical mandate, because this is the very first kind of church thing that we see.
Yeah.
And those are 5 key elements. So if you want to maybe touch on a little bit of those 5, I mean, what do you think is the hardest one to do that you've seen in church? What's the easiest one to do? Which one's the most important, if there is one?
I think they're all important, and I would even add a 6th one in there and say, and they devoted themselves to prayer. We need to be a praying church.
Facts, yes.
Yeah, a praying church. Look at verse 42. It says, and to break bread and to prayer. We see that they were filled with prayer, that's what they were really wanting to be centered on God.
So true.
Look at the disciples. They said, out of all the things they could have learned from Jesus, they wanted to learn how to pray.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we need a praying church. We need a supported church, a fellowship, discipleship, evangelism, all what you said right there, all very important. And I think, some churches do well in those areas. Some churches need to grow in those areas, but we're not a perfect church. If you can find a perfect church, let us know where that is.
We'll go attend.
Yeah, I'd love to see a perfect church. But
which one do you feel like in the whole thing of churches, and maybe not take, Catholic or something like that, but just in Protestant evangelical life, what do you think is the one of those that maybe we struggle with the most? Or do you have one that you feel like maybe this is something that we struggle with?
I've seen a lot of churches that I've been on staff of always go back to how can we be better disciples?
Okay.
How can we make better disciples? What is our discipleship strategy? Not saying that's the one that they struggle with the most. I've just seen that a lot. And I think we can get so wrapped up into strategies, into 5-point plans of discipleship, or follow this 6 method. Let's just sit down and teach them God's word. Yes, follow the Great Commission. I'll never forget one time I was asked with a bunch of interns, a pastor asked all of us interns, said, write a mission statement for a church using a Bible verse. Nobody used the Great Commission in Matthew 28.
He said what? Write a what?
Write a mission statement for a church using a Bible verse. None of us used the Great Commission. And he said, I noticed that none of y'all used the Great Commission. Why not just go to the simple calling?
Dang,
and that's our simple calling, to have a discipleship method. So I think we can all get frustrated with, okay, well, D groups or community groups, whatever.
Sunday school classes.
Yeah, Sunday school classes.
Yeah, true.
Let's just sit down and follow those words.
Those things are good.
Yeah,
those are good things, really good. But it's not the point. That's just to serve a point. The big point is the Great Commission. Is making disciples. Is going and teaching. One of the things I wanted to ask you is, you've been in the big church, that kind of setting before at a couple places you've been. So do you feel like that they have struggled in fellowship a little bit? Because that was kind of what I was expecting maybe you would say, and I didn't really know, but maybe with the bigger church, trying to make the big church small and having fellowship, and it may be easier because there's so many people. Fellowship may even be easier, but I've maybe witnessed or heard and even seen sometimes it's easier to have fellowship in a little bit smaller of a church, than if you kind of go, you can kind of become invisible in some of the larger ones. What's your thoughts on that?
I would say, one, it depends on the church that you're asking about, because I've seen fellowship work in one of the largest churches in this country. I've also seen fellowship not work in some other mega churches that I've been a part of. And it all goes back to the culture that you're creating. Is the importance fellowship.
Good point.
And so the mega churches that I've been a part of that have had a great culture of fellowship made that a priority because they saw it in the Bible, going back to these verses. And then the mega churches that I've been a part of that haven't made fellowship an important part of their culture, haven't really focused on discipleship as much. They've wanted to, and they're getting there, but they just continue to focus on discipleship. And so if you make it a priority, it'll all work out. If you surrender it to God and make it a priority, it'll all work out in the end. And I'd also say, if you find yourself struggling to maybe find fellowship in the church, take that first step and introduce yourself. See, we have to kind of
Super
give
good,
give
yeah.
or take in this sense when it comes to churches, that we want the church to, we can fall into that trap of wanting the church to fit our needs, but sometimes we just need to take a step out in faith.
Dude,
And then when you
super
see
good.
yourself finding and meeting a new first-time guest connection, go introduce yourself to them. Make them feel welcomed into the church, that this is a loving community.
Ask them what they need.
Yeah, ask how
them
we can,
help
pray for
you.
you.
Yes, so
Invite them
good.
into your small group.
Yes,
and that's where you
so
create that
good.
fellowship right there.
Absolutely. Yeah. Dude,
Invite them into
so
your
good.
homes.
Hey, thank you. Every time we get together, I'm so glad. I'm like, man, this is amazing. So I mean, I should have a notebook, just start writing notes. But look, super glad that y'all are joining us today as well. We are in Acts 1 through 5 today. Tomorrow, we're going to be in the next 5 chapters. Don't forget to leave a comment in the description box below for your chance to win a pair of Apple AirPods. And until tomorrow, we'll see y'all. Peace.